Hi, it's wonderful to get together with all of you again. We met very briefly right at the beginning when you all convened, and I'm Clive, the Executive and Artistic Director of Carnegie Hall. And it's my really, really great honor and thrill and everything else to be able to introduce Wynton Marsalis to all of you. I mean, you know, it's the usual thing to say that he needs no introduction, but nonetheless, we just thought in terms of welcome, really important just to speak a few words about him. I mean, you all know he's a truly extraordinary musician, remarkable composer in many genres, a band leader, and a passionate educator. His work spans multiple genres, including, of course, classical and jazz. And he's the only musician ever to win a Grammy for jazz and classical in the same year. He's done a truly extraordinary job as founder, managing and artistic director of Jazz at Lincoln Center. And sitting at Carnegie Hall, we're always incredibly jealous of them having Wynton over there, you know, dreaming that if only that had been at Carnegie Hall, but there you go. But we are talking about ideas for the future, which I'm not allowed to talk about now, but would be absolutely complementary to the work that he does at Lincoln Center. I mean, many of you may have heard of Essentially Ellington, the high school jazz band festival Wynton founded 25 years ago, which brings together the finest high school jazz bands from across the country, and many of you may even have played in it, and also probably know about his regional festivals throughout the US tied to this. So I think for all of us, Wynton, I mean, it's a thrill, an honor, everything, for you to come and speak to all of the students who are part of the National Youth Orchestra of America, NYO-2, the younger group, and then NYO Jazz, for you to speak to them and give your time to engage with them and really have a conversation, I think is an extraordinary experience and a unique one for all of them. So thank you so much. And I know this will be a very special event for them all. Thank you. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Clive. It's an honor and a pleasure. Of course, I love Carnegie Hall. I grew up in the hall listening to so many great performances, and I want to shout out also to Joanna, who's here, and her father, Stephen Massey, is the greatest band director in the history of the United States of America, and he's sitting next to her, so I'm nervous talking. And I'm honored to be here and ready to answer any questions. No question is too anything. I thank y'all so much for joining me, and I'm honored to be here.
Great. Thank you so much, Wynton, and thank you, Clive. My job today is just to get to as many questions as possible. So I know a lot of you submitted them in advance. My hope is that if you submitted a question in advance and you're here on the call, that I can just call on you and you can share your question. If you don't remember it, I have them written down. But we'll go through as many of the ones submitted in advance as we can. And then if we have time left at the end, I'm sure Wynton would be willing to take some live questions as well, which you can put in the chat and send to me. So let's kick it off here. I have a question from Eli Canales. Eli, are you on the call? And if you are, please just unmute yourself. And
yes, I am.
Great. Do you remember your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I was just curious, did you enter college with the intent of being a jazz or classical musician, like one-sided, or did you kind of have both in mind? And how did you kind of manage your time throughout your career to be able to hone your skills the way you did in both fields?
Thank you for your question, Eli. My father's a jazz musician, so I wanted to play jazz. I loved classical music because my father also was a person who was educated, and he taught us all of the music to try to understand and continue to learn all types of music. When I came to New York, I was trying to get out of New Orleans, number one, and I was trying to play jazz. I didn't know if it was possible at that time because most of the people were playing kind of like funk and fusion, which I had grown up playing. I didn't know actually if it was possible to learn how to play jazz in my generation. So as things had it, I got the opportunity to play jazz, had the opportunity to play with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. My roommate actually in New York, I met at Tanglewood. We were playing in the orchestra, and he's a percussionist. He was 10 years older than me, and he was the drummer with the Heath Brothers. And we had an apartment uptown in New York. And he told me one night, he said, man, if you're going to learn how to play, you have to get in Art Blakey's band. If you don't get in his band, I don't see anybody else hiring younger people. So you're going to stay sad for the rest of your life. So I said, I have to figure out how to play with Art Blakey. And once I got into Art Blakey's band, I decided to stop playing classical music, actually, and try to learn how to play jazz. And one of my teachers called me to play a Vivaldi 2-trumpet concerto on a radio show. And I played on the radio show, and some kind of way the tape of that performance had gotten to Columbia Records. And at that time, I think I was 19 years old, and I already was signing a contract to play jazz. I was 18, and an executive producer heard, somebody sent them the tape of me playing on the radio and said, man, we didn't know you played classical music. We have money that we can't get out of communist countries at that time, Eastern Bloc countries. So we could send you to Czechoslovakia. We could send you somewhere where we can't get money out, and you could do a classical record. So I went over there to record the Haydn Concerto. But at that time, I didn't know that what would happen with it. And as things worked out, I started to get some publicity for playing. That's a long answer to your question, but no, so far as how I manage my time, I was always very disciplined with time in terms of practicing, studying, and also listening to music. I went to so many concerts in Carnegie Hall to hear great orchestras. And I would always ask my friends, younger people I knew playing jazz, hey, let's go check out this, or let's go check out that. Many didn't want to check out things, not just classical music, but in New York, I had a lot of mentors, writers like Albert Murray, artists like Romare Bearden, a playwright like August Wilson. I would always invite younger people to come with me to check them out, but there was not a lot of interest. So I think for me, managing your time is just a matter of scheduling the time that you don't do anything. You know, a lot of times we have a tendency to schedule when we do stuff, schedule when you don't do things, and then do everything else. And I hope that helps you with what you're dealing with, Brother Eli.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're right.
Great. I think I see Chris Ledoux. Chris, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. What would be your best piece of advice to a young musician who's still contemplating what he wants to do as he grows, or he or she?
You know, Chris, my best advice is follow the thing that you really love doing. And remember that no burden is too great if it's something that you love. Like, I have a little brother that's autistic, and he was born in 1970. At that time, nobody knew what autism was. And when he was like 2 or 3 years old, I was 11, around that age, 11, 12. And we went to a parade in New Orleans. And New Orleans, we have these parades, a bunch of people catching the balloons and making a lot of noise. And I noticed my mother kept shifting my little brother back from one end to another, trying to carry him, because you don't want an autistic 2 or 3-year-old kid running around in a parade. So I kept telling my mother, let me carry him, Then I saw her make a big shift, like the kind of shift you make when you really don't want to carry something. And when I saw her make that big shift, I started aggravating her. Listen, let me carry him. And she looked at me and she said, listen, when I have some groceries, you come help me with those. She said, when I have some groceries, come help me with those. How heavy something is depends on how you feel about carrying it. So that stayed with me my entire life. How heavy something is depends on how you feel about carrying it. That's what I have to say about you pursuing music or any very difficult field. This is a very difficult field. I'll never forget meeting Ella Fitzgerald, and I shook her hand, and she kind of looked at me. I was getting ready to introduce myself to her, and she said, I know who you are. And she said, God bless you, baby. It's going to be very hard. And that's all she said, and we started laughing. I didn't understand at that age what she meant, but now I have a very clear understanding. So I'm going to tell you, if you really are compelled to do it, do it. If you have reservations, don't do it. It's too hard. It's a lot of fun, though.
Thank you.
Hold you. All right, little Chris.
Great. Isaiah Sheeran. Isaiah, do you want to go ahead with your question?
I think I asked like what inspires you. It can be like non-musical or musical, and I think I asked like what your life would be like, what your life in music would be like without the trumpet.
Well, first, there's inspiration in many ways. You know, answering your question is inspirational. Some young people being on here, and Joanna's daddy being here. Okay, I'm not saying it as a joke. I look up to him. I admire him. I have tremendous respect for him. How he dealt with his community, the level of integrity he has as a director. I was in an unfortunate position of judging his bands. One year he had a band that I really thought should have won, and the other judges didn't want him to win. So we argued a lot about it. And he came in second in this competition, and I saw him at the end, and we had known each other for years. And I told him, man, you know, I wanted you to win or something like that. And he looked at me and said, man, we're not doing this for this. He said, we're doing this for these kids. This is an honor to be a part of that. Don't approach me with that kind of stupidity. He wasn't harsh about it, but he had such integrity and grace that now we're on the line. That's maybe 15 years ago, 12 years. I don't know how many years. And Joanna, maybe she was in high school. I don't know. She was, you know, now she has kids, you know. And it's inspirational. It's a cycle. So I try to conduct myself with the type of dignity and integrity I saw him conduct himself with. So that's one source of inspiration. So, you know, everything is cyclical. Now, in terms of the trumpet, that's the instrument I had. You know, when I was growing up, if you had an instrument, you were going to play it. So it wasn't like you had an instrument, you're going to go get another one. My daddy would be very clear, there's no money. This is your instrument. You better play this. Then I love the trumpet. And I had the kind of trumpet personality. But I like the other instruments too. If I wouldn't play trumpet, I would be happy to play piano. I always wish I could play piano. I'm a real sad piano player, but I would always, throughout the years, tease my father and play something real sad on the piano and say, watch out, bro, I'm coming for you. And he would just start laughing and say, man, keep your day job. So, you know, I like the music. It doesn't matter what the instrument is. Thank you for your question, Isaiah.
Great. Let's see. This is a great question, and I'm not sure if he's on here. Abilniak Guerra, are you on here? I don't see him, but let's ask it anyway, Wynton, because he submitted it and I like it. He wants to know what was one of or your most meaningful concert you've ever played?
You know, it's one thing sticks out in my mind of all the times I played. I played a gig, and it was somewhere in the Midwest. I'm going to remember it's a college town, so it'll come to me. And I was hanging in the bar after the gig, and with cats of the band, and a lady came to me. It was a group of ladies, and she said, "Our kids play in a band, you know." And I said, "Yeah." They said, "Yeah, they have rehearsal tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock." I said, "Come on, nobody, y'all did not rehearse at 6 o'clock." She said, "I'm telling you, they rehearsed at 6 o'clock." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." I said, when you get up, call me. And if you call me, I'll come to their rehearsal. And she said, "Well, the rehearsal is like 20 minutes away." I said, "I don't care. If y'all can come pick me up, we'll come up." But I thought, you know, she was just, nobody's rehearsing at 6 o'clock. At 5:30, she rang my room about 20 times. And finally I answered it. And she said, "Mr. Marsalis, we're downstairs. We're ready for the rehearsal." I drove her to the rehearsal with this lady. And I walked into the room. It was like 6 in the morning. It was a bunch of kids with xylophones in the off method. And my eyes welled up with tears. I played with them. And I just thought, okay, the sun is not even out. And there's a group of kids that are like 9 to 12 or something. Then, you know, kind of middle school age, 10, 11, 13 or something. And they're sitting up here rehearsing every morning at 6 o'clock. And I think that was memorable for me. In terms of professionally playing gigs, I have many. You know, I play with so many great musicians. And they play so well so much of the time in so many different settings. Everything from the Berlin Philharmonic to Willie Nelson to great Yaqub Adi to Sonny Rollins. I could go on and on the list of people I was blessed to play with and good stories that I can't signal out one. I had a blessing to play with a septet. Man, we would play in the late 1980s and 90s. Sometimes we would get 6, 5, 7 encores. And we played on the plane one time. We played in Eastern Europe. We went somewhere and they had a restaurant that was closed. And we started playing our horns at like 1 o'clock in the morning. The guy opened his restaurant up and cooked food for us. And we sat up in there at 8 till 4 o'clock in the morning. Another time we played in Chiba, Japan, for people who were just like working in farms and stuff. It was in a real small club, and they all got around and they cooked food and we played. And then we cooked some more food, and I started playing blues on the piano. People start dancing around. I have many memories like that of just human things that went on. So that's another long answer for my man. I'm glad you're not on the call because I was struggling with your name. So that's that's what I got to say about that one.
Okay, great. Let's go to Nathan King. Nathan is our lead trumpet player in NYO Jazz this year. I think there might be a trumpet theme to this question, Nathan.
Okay, Nathan.
I asked if there was ever a time when you sort of got frustrated with or almost like didn't want to play trumpet anymore. Not necessarily music, but specifically trumpet.
You know, I never felt that. I saw my daddy struggle so much growing up to play, and always kind of like a local musician, playing and struggling, you know, just struggling with life. So, and in terms of playing the trumpet, I always loved the instrument and playing. I had kind of an aptitude for it. Then when I was in my early 40s, I had an operation with, I had something in my upper lip. And once the doctor took that out, so first they're telling me laser surgery. I don't know what I was thinking. I think laser is going to be some pinpoint. But then when they cut it, it was like a knife that's a light. And then when I came back to try to play, I couldn't play at all. So that was the moment that I was like, am I going to relearn how to play with another embouchure? And then, you know, I learned more in the next 2 or 3 years just trying to relearn how to play. And I never had a frustration with the instrument. You know, sometimes I sound sad on it, but I never blame the instrument. And it's been a blessing for me. I don't go through a lot of angst, but I'm not like a trumpet person, like with mouthpiece you play and all of that. And no, I never went through too much of that. Nathan, I wish I had some good advice for you on that front. The only thing I always say is after you make your mind up, you're going to do it. Our experiences are all so personal. There's no one way to experience learning how to play, playing, feeling depressed. You might go through a period of depression and come out of that and be much better than you were. There's no hard and fast rule to it. I think you just got to kind of bounce with stuff and keep your balance and accept things that come to you and try to figure out how to, you know, go back and forth. We all have kind of different skills and different temperaments, and what worked for me may not necessarily work for you, I think.
Great. Rafael Noriega, are you there, Rafael?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead.
So I would like to ask, let's see, how did you set your goals when you were younger, and how would you stay motivated to achieve those goals?
You know, I mean, I wanted to learn how to play. I wanted my daddy and them to think I could play. So it was pieces I wanted to learn. I would listen to stuff. I wondered if I could play it, and I practice it. I was always listening to people. I listened to Maurice Andre, and of course the jazz trumpet players. You were so far away from them, like, you know, Clifford Brown or Miles. I mean, people could play. Man, you know, then we was playing on like pentatonic scales. I listen to that and I listen to Clifford. I'd be like, damn, I'm not ever going to learn how to play like these people. So I would try to learn slowly how to play things I didn't know. And if it was hard pieces, like I remember I was trying to play the Brandenburg Concerto. A guy came to my house and his name was William Fielder. He taught at Mississippi Valley State University. And we're all kind of country, man. You know, we grew up in the South. Everything was segregated. It's hard to explain to somebody what that lifestyle is like. And he had a trumpet in his car. It was an F trumpet. And I never played a different trumpet besides a B-flat trumpet. So I was listening to Maurice Andre, trying to learn these Maurice Andre songs off of the record. I got to this Leopold Mozart concerto. I didn't know he was playing piccolo trumpet. I mean, I was trying to play this, hitting high Fs and stuff. Man, how does this dude get this sound? He said, man, that's a piccolo trumpet. I said, huh? He said, that's a piccolo trumpet, man. He said, I'm going to go in my car and get this F trumpet for you. So he went and got the F trumpet for me. I started trying to play it. I couldn't get a note out of it. He said, if you learn how to play this trumpet, I'm going to sell it to you for $50. I said, okay. So I started practicing the F trumpet. And then he came back maybe 3 months later. I kind of had gotten the F trumpet where I could play some notes on it. Then he said, this is the piece you got to learn. And he played the Bach Brandenburg Concerto No. 2. He gave me a piccolo trumpet, a queen on piccolo trumpet, and said, if you can play this piece, the third movement of the second Brandenburg Concerto, when I come back, I'm gonna give you this piccolo trumpet. So I told my daddy, man, make sure Fielder don't come back until I learn how to play this piece. So, you know, Fielder will be trying to come back. Don't let him come back. And then I started to kind of get it together. And he came back and I played it. He let me have it. So, you know, I was always asking people and studying. I was always very serious about studying too, and not just studying trumpet music. So once I learned about Beethoven, I read Thayer's Life of Beethoven. Once I learned about Haydn, I started reading about Haydn, his impact on Beethoven. And I was always trying to make connections between things. I don't know why, just philosophically. I guess I had grown up in such ignorance, but my friends always loved me. They would always say, man, let Marsalis coming in. He wasn't thinking about this stuff. And I kind of had the reputation in my neighborhood for that kind of figuring out stuff. And I would just keep figuring out stuff, how to get better, how to work on things, what to read, what's connected to what. And it was much harder in that time than it is now. Man, then I'll go to the Tulane University Library when I was 14 or 15. I'll be the only high school kid up in there. And I would be listening to Don Smithers recordings, and I would be studying and reading, getting different things about Baroque trumpets and ancient brass instruments, and trying to learn all this kind of stuff, the American cornet tradition, try to figure out what different people played in different traditions. I didn't know the jazz tradition as much as I should have known it, because my father taught Afro-American music at Xavier University. But I still was a certain type of ignorance I maintained, just to try to show my daddy that I didn't have to learn anything. But as I got older, I started to try to peel that ignorance away. Even to today, I'm always, so that's how I would set my goals. You know, what do I want to learn? What do I want to play? How do I want to round my knowledge out? And it continues, I think, for me.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, brother.
Let's see, Cody York. Cody, are you there?
That's a
you have
good
a
name.
question.
Yes, I'm here.
Cody York. That's a good name. Sound like a Western
Thank
movie.
you.
Cody York. When Cody gets here, y'all gonna be in trouble. Where's Cody? Okay,
I'm
Cody.
here.
Okay.
I actually had two questions. As a trumpet player, I have to ask, how do you get the level of like brilliance and clarity on your cornet solos?
You know, the first thing is really just practice it. I wish I could record that again, because when I recorded it, I didn't understand about the phrasing. I actually met somebody 4 or 5 years after that recording who had played with Edwin Franco Goldman Band, an older guy. And he gave me a lesson, and it made so much sense what he told me about the phrasing, that they would always take a break after one. You know, so he sang it for me. Man, it made so much sense, and I just didn't have that information. Now, in terms of double tongue and triple tongue and playing high, low, that's a matter of being very systematic about your practice and just being for real. You know, I wish I could tell you I didn't practice, but I did. I was very serious. Even when I was in high school, I would practice every day. I get up early in the morning, go to bed late at night. I played gigs. I practiced, I rehearsed. You got to practice. You know, get your metronome, be disciplined with your practice. And also listen to yourself. Then we didn't tape ourselves as much as y'all can do now. We didn't have phones that could tape and all that kind of stuff. But I think it goes back to just how you feel about it. If you got a certain feeling about it and pride, you're going to do it a certain way. It's like how you do any job. You know, I remember one summer, me and my boy painted a house. He told me, man, this is going to be some easy money, Moss. Sometimes they call me Moss. It's going to be some easy money. Man, you ever do like work with your hands up here for a long time? Man, we painted one side of this house. I was like, man, how you get me into this? But still, from him, he was saying, man, you got to do a better job than this. You got to do a better job. Just the sense of a certain integrity about jobs that you do. When you have a paper to write your outline, do your research, be for real. If you got to, you know, I was in a high school a couple of years, was like janitors in the high school to pay for going to school. How you going to do your job? It's really the same philosophy with your work ethic. Develop your integrity and your work ethic. And then you're not always running around apologizing. And then you do the best you can do, and that's all you can do. So for me, you know, practicing was never a problem, or doing some work. And I tell that a lot of times to students that I hear, if you're not really going to be serious about it, do it like a hobby, like have fun with it. You know, and you can have a lot of fun. But as a profession, you got to put in that time on it. An intelligent time, not just wasting hours sitting in the practice room. Be intelligent, approach your technical skills, break them down into components, grade yourself, work on the ones you have the most difficulty on. Keep a chart of how good you are, even if it's just in your mind. Have definite places that you want to get. And in terms of your goals, you know, if you're looking at the exercise, I want to be able to play this in 2 weeks, or I would like to do this in one breath. I would like to be able to play at this metronome mark. I would like to. Now, in terms of your musical things, like you just got to want to make people feel a certain way. That's something that's very difficult to practice. That's just about your level of honesty and how direct you can be when you're communicating with people. And you can work on that too. And you work on that by just being honest and being for real about how you feel, and not feeling like you got to conduct a poll every time you have an opinion. Because a lot of times you're going to have opinions that people don't agree with. So be it. Let it be that. I always try to tell my trumpet students, even if I don't agree with it, you know, you got to find your own way by thinking about stuff and having it mean so much to you that you're willing to sacrifice something for it. Then when you go to speak to people and play and talk, you're going to, that brilliance and that type of fire and heat is going to come out of you because you pay some dues for it and you believe in it. And you also want to communicate something to people. Now, always remember that if you have something to communicate with me, but none of it includes me, I'm not going to be that interested in it. So there's some emotions and things that we feel, that all of us feel, and some things that are only about you. Try to find things that's about you and me, and you got a better chance of communicating to me. I once told a great piano player, John Lewis, I used to go to his house all the time at noon, 1 o'clock, and I'd hang for a couple hours and just play with him. He played the piano. His wife, Mariana, really could play too. She played harpsichord. Of course, he's the music director of the modern jazz quartet for many years. So I would call him, I always tell him the same thing. Hey, Mr. Lewis, what's happening? You got some time for me today? And he would say, huh? I said, you got some time for me today? And he would say, for you, I have some time. For the music, I have all the time in the world. And then we would both laugh. And then I would go to this house and see him. But it was important to understand that. Yes, I have time all the time for the music. For you, yeah, I love you. You can come here for an hour. So, you know when you're playing for people and connect with them. And the more you can connect with people when you're playing for them, the less it's about you and what you feel and yourself. Y'all's generation is a lot more myopic in your view because you're on machines and cell phones and all of that. I'm from the country, man, segregation. Everybody in the neighborhood knew each other. Everybody was out in the street. It's Louisiana, it's hot. So, my upbringing is a little different. Doesn't mean it's better. Because you have the opportunity to hook up with many more people and you have a much broader view of the world. So I'm not saying better, I'm just saying the environment was different. It was a lot more personal. So I encourage y'all to develop both. Don't give your machines up because there's a lot of communication can go on in that, but make sure you keep that personal feeling in there.
Thank you.
Yes, I hope that answered. And that's connected to what you were saying about brilliance, because when you're trying to do something for somebody, you're going to do it with much more feeling than you do it if you're just doing it. It's like you cook a meal for somebody you love, man, you're putting a lot into that meal. You want them to like it. And that's how you want to be with your playing.
Great. Thank you, Cody. James McCaffrey. Are you there, James?
Yes, I'm here. Here, let me find my question. There it is. Okay. Recently, I've been watching your Wednesdays with Wynton on jazz.org, and I've been learning a lot from those, and it's been really fascinating. And you speak a lot about the different connections between music and things throughout our everyday lives. And I was sort of wondering how you came along to learn that philosophy, and how has that affected your life?
Thank you that's a good question, James. I got it from my father and other musicians. I mean, that's how they were. Sweet Edison. One lucky thing I had is that the time I grew up in jazz, the scene was very depressed, like nobody was on it. No younger people were ever on gigs that I went to. It was always like, 9 people, 10. So I would go to a club called Le Club in the Hyatt Regency, and I would go see great musicians like Eddie Lockjaw Davis, Jimmy McParland. I mean, it was everybody would go through that, but there were no people, and I was the only kid, Roy Eldridge. And I would notice when they talked, I didn't like the music so much. I was not hip enough to be able to like any jazz that wasn't, kind of fusion, the stuff I grew up playing. I was just kind of getting my hipness together where I could hear. I think of all the times I heard Sweets, I still wasn't hip enough to hear him. We all listening to Freddie Hubbard and trying to play like that. So, Sweets and them, I couldn't, it wasn't until later. But I always listened when they talk. And man, it was always analogies and humor, and it was always something that make you laugh. And so I learned that way from them. And that's how I grew up seeing it. I don't think of the music so much as something separate from what it is about life that you're trying to communicate. And the music can help you deal with so many things. I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday, a young musician who's involved in politics, and we were talking about how he was saying he thought that the politics of today, you had to be very granular and deal with local communities, and everybody thinks the federal government is going to cure everything, and that a lot of the issues that are before people, it's not even something the federal government is designed to help. So I was telling him, learn Monk's song, Epistrophe. I said, go study epistrophe, and let's talk about epistrophe and the harmonic progression. And that's what I want you to think about when you deal with the grassroots politics. Because epistrophe is a song that forces you to deal with each chord and with the overall form. And I use that song as an example because I want him to think, don't think you have to choose between the macro world and the micro world. But if you don't have a macro world view, you can't be successful in the micro world. I mean, if you don't have a macro view, let me say it again. If you do not have a macro world view, you're going to look at the micro world. You won't be able to expand into the macro world. However, you can start with a micro. You can start when you have a macro view. You can go into the micro and do okay with your macro understanding. So I always would rather hear somebody talk about the overall form of a song than how do you go from F to F sharp, or how do you go from E flat to E. All that minutia, I want to deal with that after I know that you understand what our overall objectives are. So I kind of convoluted my answer to you, but maybe you could follow it. I get that analogy thing from all the early music. Dizzy, I talked to Dizzy. He always had some type of analogy or something you would say. Any of them, Elvin. I was like a son to Elvin Jones. I would always go to his house around 11 o'clock at night and leave there at 4. And just sitting up in his house, listening to him talk about all kinds of stuff. It was always an analogy. It was always some kind of story, Everybody was like that.
Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Let's see here, Seth Finch, Juilliard Jazz bound Seth Finch. Where are you, Seth?
Oh, what's happening, Seth?
Hi, Mr. Marsalis. Thank you for being here. This is kind of like with your thing with how you moved to New York and you wanted to get into Art Blakey's band. I was wondering if you had any advice for like young jazz musicians who are just moving to New York, who are seeking out mentors or, people to give them analogies and, take them under their wing and stuff like that.
I think everybody can mentor you. You choose them and they got to choose you. And I think also look outside of music too. There's a lot of great people in New York, a lot of great creative people, older than you. Sometimes when you go to school, a lot of people can play too. Somebody your age can teach you. Like one of my sons is 30, 31 years old, 32. I told him, man, I'm gonna call the guy I went to Juilliard with when I was 18. And we started talking. A good friend of mine named Justin Cohen. We talked about all the different things that happened in New York when I was there, different type of racism. We felt he's Jewish and I'm Black. And we were talking about, man, you remember the time we did this or we did this? So we just started talking about all this stuff. And when he got off the phone, my son said, man, y'all have a real natural kind of relationship. And I was telling him how much the Justin taught me about playing the trumpet, even though he's my age. And we were talking about that, and we were laughing about music. And so you got to realize when you go to a place with a lot of kids who are your age that know a lot, not just musicians, you got dancers, opera singers, you have people in all forms. Learn from them and be open to what people around you know, and then go to gigs, get out. I was telling you when Clive was talking how much I would get into Carnegie Hall. Hey, sometimes, you know, I have to get in on a $5 ticket. I was getting leftover tickets somewhere. I was gonna get in there to hear the Chicago Symphony or to hear Maurizio Pollini or all the great concerts I heard. I couldn't sit in my room. Then we didn't have dorms. I can't sit in my room waiting for New York to come to me. You know, there's a lot of fantastic arts in New York. So I just encourage you to get out there, and you know, stuff is gonna come to you. And the people you gravitate toward, go be around them, because they're not gonna go be around you. You got to go get around them. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Good luck. Good luck and handle your business. We need y'all out here. This is a rough time. We need some younger people with some integrity, and it's very, very difficult for y'all. This is a difficult environment. Not to say it was not difficult when I was coming, because it was hard. It was hard then to just figure out what it meant to play. But now it's like, you know, this is something. Well, I've never seen nothing like this. We need y'all. The leadership is going to have to come from below. I don't think it's coming from above. Good luck.
Okay, Laura Futamara.
Hi. Thanks so much for spending time with us, first of all.
Hey, thank you, Laura. Thank you very much. I
was just wondering, what's your least favorite thing and favorite thing about working in the music industry?
Well, my least favorite thing was always just the ignorance of just music, how music is treated as a product. I mean, now it's a product, and now it's mainly made by non-musicians, which is not necessarily bad. It's hard for me to explain to you how I feel about this kind of stuff, because everything is like a cycle. So if you look at things like a cycle, you realize that the least sophisticated is right next to the most sophisticated. So when you look at it like you would look at C and C sharp and B natural, hey, that C sharp is really close to C, but it's far away harmonically. It's really close spatially. So I just think music as a product, now it dominates everything. Everything is about sales, product, money. Now it's 8 people to write a song, and they each putting little component parts of it together. And it's hooks and it's machines and it's all things. It's just kind of, you know, and I know that there's many, many kinds of music and many people making music, but I just mean if this much of our pie consists of that, most of the music that people you know are listening to is people with charisma creating products that fulfill a need, that are sometimes connected to pornography in some way, or to some type of condescension to a group of people. Either they're from the ghetto or they're a certain age. The people are all stratified, and they're all being sold to based on whatever their tribe is. I don't like that so much. I think that because it's hard for you to know who your tribe is unless you really are exposed to a lot of different things. And the predisposed prejudice that you will have just by things that are sent to you on your telephone, that you now can curate your life experience. If you're not a curator, you're going to have a hard time. You need things you don't like, and you need people you don't like. You need points of views you don't agree with. You need to argue and go back and forth to find balance. You cannot be the curator of your world. So that's the thing I think I don't like the most, is just the preponderance of products made by charismatic people who are creative but have never figured out anything about music. So because they don't know anything about music does not mean they can't make products that are actually more interesting than the products a musician would make. It's that strange kind of place in creativity where not knowing something helps you. We need more of a balance of both. People who know something with the freedom of a person who does not know. That's a lot of times when people say, think like a child or do something like you don't know. I hope that answered you. That's kind of complex answer I'm trying to give you.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right, I'm sorry if I didn't get directly to with you, but I don't like all the propaganda, because if you're not equipped, if you're a young person, I don't know that you're going to be able to defend yourself. you don't have enough knowledge. And a lot of times these kind of early prejudices prevent you from ever being able to acquire the knowledge. So you have to be it's really important for you to listen to points of views that are not your own, and to be for real about listening to what people are saying and trying to come to grips and not just dismissing it right offhand.
Thanks, Wynton. We have one big kid who would like to say hello. Sean, go ahead.
Hey, man, thanks for being here. I got to jump real quick to get to another thing, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, being here with us. I love you very much. And so does Phoebe. She's over there saying the same thing.
Man, you know I love you, man. It's good to hear your voice. It's uplifting. Thank you.
Yes, sir. See you soon.
All right, Sean. Yeah, you're right, man.
Bye, Sean. Let's see, Mason Crowder. You want to pop on?
First of all, I'd like to thank you, for doing this for us and for taking time out of your day to answer our questions and be here with us. But I was just kind of curious, how is your experience working with Nicola Benedetti when you were writing your violin concerto? What was it like working with her?
Well, I've been knowing her a long time, and I love her. So it's like, she always wants everything on time. And I'm like, listen. But, you got to realize that for me, I knew her for 10 or 15 years or something. She would always call me and ask me questions about, music and organizations, and very mature. Like, I'd be wondering why somebody played the violin, she'd come out and hear the band and be into jazz. And so, it was good. It was, I was writing it for her, so I was trying to make it be something that she wanted to play. And I actually learned more writing for her than I had learned in all these years, because then she was playing it, and it was very interesting how she could play a whole concert. And every time she would tell me something was wrong with it, it would be like something that was either not written what was in the score, or a dynamic wasn't in, or something was in the wrong clef. I was thinking, man, how could she sometimes she would send me a list after a concert of 60 things. Check this measure, check that. The viola should come in on this, and it would be very specific. And I would say, that's why you messing this piece up, because you're too busy listening to what everybody else is doing. And she would laugh. But it was great. It's great working with her. And she's very, very serious about music. So somebody that's serious is always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Julian Martinez. Question from the chat here. Do you want to jump in?
Hello.
Hey, now.
I just had a question. Sometimes I have a battle between imitation and inspiration. And I was wondering how you balance being inspired by the way somebody plays without sort of becoming somebody who just imitates the playing of all of their idols.
How old are you?
I am 17.
One thing I'm gonna tell you that will help you is listen to yourself and write down what you like about your playing and what you don't like. And try not to be try not to have a lot of anxiety about it. It's too much anxiety around playing. You can't get a good understanding of who you are if you're that anxious. So write down what it is that you like. I always encourage people to listen to themselves and notice the things they do that only they do, and have respect for yourself. It's easier to see another person than it is to see yourself. It's kind of like when you hear your voice on a tape recorder, you almost never like it because you never hear your voice from in front of it. So I think that's a good question, but I think, part of what in the arts, your individuality is something you have. You don't have to earn your individuality, you have it. What you have to earn is an individuality that's tough enough to survive an education. And if your individuality can't survive education, you're not going to get to a certain level. So Beethoven had to go through Haydn. He couldn't be Beethoven without Haydn. So if he just say, well, I'm Beethoven now, I don't want to deal with Haydn. Well, there's a lot of information you're not going to get. So, and this is true, try to take it out of music and think about something like cooking. Maybe you learned how to cook from your mother or your father or your uncle or your grandmother, grandfather, whoever you learned how to cook, you're gonna cook exactly like them. But then you start to notice, you know, they like salt, I don't really like that. Or they like this, I like this. They hate eggplant. That's one of my favorite things. You start to put your thing in stuff. And always have respect for yourself and what you can come up with. So that's the best I can give you. And don't be afraid of imitating when you're young, because you're gonna imitate something different that you like in a person than I would imitate. Don't feel like those two things are opposites. Then many times we think things are opposites that are not opposites. Always remember that the opposite of a thing is not necessarily not that thing. You know, it's a hard concept to understand. But if you think about it, the opposite of fire is not dry, it's water. So if you use that as your guideline, you're gonna start to realize, okay, this is this and this is that. It helps you to develop your acuity. Then you're not a Democrat or a Republican or left or right. When you start thinking in those terms, that dual binary narrative does not serve you in your creativity. Think of a cycle. Now, when you're thinking of a cycle, you're getting closer to something that helps you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
See, Leah Stallman.
Hi. Thank you again for taking the time to speak to us today. I wanted to ask, what did you see as the most valuable thing having the combination of both classical and jazz in your professional career?
For me, the most valuable thing was learning how to hear longer forms, to develop the attention span to be able to hear a longer form piece of music that does not have to be repeated over and over again. If you think of most of the music that the world is listening to now, popular music, there's a lot of repetition, very little thematic development. Once again, I'm not making a value judgment on it. I'm saying that's what it is. With classical music, you know, you listen to a piece like, the first piece I ever really played was Beethoven's Fifth in a civic orchestra concert, and just people in the community playing. And I remember being able to just hear that one theme in a million ways. I thought, okay, this piece is kind of long. Because if you listen to radio, stuff on the radio, 3 minutes and 30 seconds, the song is over. Now it's 42 minutes. I said, wow, you got to be able to keep your attention span and follow these themes and all of that for 40 something minutes. And if you listen to something like John Coltrane, a record like Crescent, you have to follow like a 10-minute solo. That's a lot to follow. So the one thing blessing, I think, is for me, has been to be able to hear longer pieces of music and to be able to develop my taste all these years with that type of attention span. And all the great composers, music, everything from Palestrina to Shostakovich to, you know, you could go on and on the list. It's not a lot of people across time, but it is a lot of people in your lifetime. So you might have 25 of them that you could listen to in your lifetime. It took 300 and something years to get to those 25.
Great. I know we have just a couple minutes left, so I wanted to get to a last few questions. Aaron Ouellette, do you want to ask your question, Aaron?
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Marsalis.
Hey, now.
I have a question. I was just wondering if there's a visual artist who has inspired you or influenced you in your music, whether that's an album or like a big band chart or arrangement or writing or anything.
Man, many of them, you know. Romare Bearden, I knew him, so I would go to his studio. He gave me a book on mythology when I first met him. I gave him something. He agreed to do an album cover for me, and I drew out what I wanted him to do, and I gave it to him. And you know, you can keep your head in the down position, and you look up at somebody, and that means they did something stupid. That's how he did me. He went. Then he said, "This is what you want me to draw?" And I realized I shouldn't have did that. So I started kind of cheesing, and yes, sir. And he gave me a book of mythology. He said, "Learn this mythology." So him, my favorite is probably Matisse. I love Andre Matisse. I love anybody who's modern and lyrical at the same time. William Butler Yeats, kind of Irish poet. I like him. But I love Bearden and the Americans. I love Winslow Homer, Stuart Stuart Davis, fantastic. You know, Jackson Pollock from a process standpoint, and that he was doing really modern art, but he liked New Orleans music. Like that's what he was listening to. And many, I love Goya. You know, if you haven't checked Goya out, man, check Goya. Check his series called Disasters of War. I've been into my freedom theme this month because of all the kind of civil distress and everybody kind of trying to deal with the fact of a search for equality and a symbiotic way of living with other people instead of a predatory way. And I go back to that Goya, Disasters of War. That's a great series for all of y'all to check out. You can't believe it was done in the early 1800s by a person over 60. That kind of youthfulness and vigor from an older person, and with that type of acerbic wit about the vicissitudes of war and the type of inhuman injustices that go on just because people can do things to you. So I kind of gave you a long answer, but you know, I like the Renaissance masters too. You know, I love, well, I mean, he's not a Renaissance, you got to love Velasquez too. You can't be mad at him. But you know, you can't beat Vermeer. They look like he's taking photographs, you know. I love Vermeer. And man, there's so many great, you know, Mondrian, he loved jazz. So he dealing with like the kind of underlying form with all different squares. There's so many different concepts out here now for the contemporary art too. Many great people.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a lot of good stuff to look at.
I think we probably have time for one more. Michael Arizmendi, you there, Michael?
Hello. I was wondering if, what is your main thought point when improvising? Like what emotions are flowing through you and what are you thinking about when improvising?
Just that. Little, just it's not a thought like that. Because if you ever thought there's not the music, then you're going away from the music. You have to train your mind to think in the music and go by your instinct and train your instinct. Rely on your ears. If you think in chords and all of that, you're not going to play right. Like if I start playing a progression like giant steps and I'm going, if I'm spelling every chord out, I'm gonna struggle. Too much going on. But if I just hear it in the flow, I can just go on and on. I'm just hearing it. Boo, bee, boo, boo. See what I'm saying? I'm not thinking, if something don't come out, I'm just kind of, you see, I'm even moving like I'm juking somebody on the field. So I'm just trying to find that, get up in here and just hear the music. Because you're going to think yourself out of something you can hear to play something much worse that you figured out. Let your hearing be the figure out. We improvise, and that's the beauty of it. If you take away all the improvisation, you're not doing it. You know, get up in here. It's like me wanting you to say what I want you to say. I don't want you to say nothing but what you want to say. And the more you give me something that, oh, I didn't know, I'm going to go in another direction, it's going to help me. Right? It's like the gene pool. You don't want married people in your family. You want to look across. You want to get more richness into that root. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That makes sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're right, little brother.
Wynton, thank you so much. I have one last question. All three of our ensembles are going to be recording during the next week, and putting together some virtual recordings and some video projects. And I just wonder if you have any advice for them, since we can't be together and be in ensembles in the way that we would all wish to be. Do you have any words of advice on recording and putting together projects virtually?
Okay, this is what I think is a good order. Start with the drums, and then do the bass and the piano, and then use that as a metronome, and then record the drums again at the end, because the drums is the driver. So you have rhythm section, lay that out. Now, have a meeting about the songs you're gonna play, and have everybody go through the score and mark out who's playing lead where. Then have all the lead players play on the first pass. So even if you're only playing lead for 2 measures, play lead that 2 measures. Now you have a tape of the video that has the rhythm section and all lead parts. And if it's a double lead, if the trumpet is playing with the alto, you choose who's gonna be the lead voice. It's gotta be the trumpet. If the alto's leading the trombone section, it's gotta be the alto. So, you know, pick, the intelligence comes beforehand. Dissect that arrangement. Now you have that track with the lead and the rhythm section. Then everybody else in a day, you can put your parts in under those lead parts. Then the drums go back and record and play like open and give it fire. That's the best way to do it, I think.
Great.
I think. Y'all might come with a better way, let me know.
We'll let you know how it turns out for sure.
All right.
And our orchestras too. There's some unique challenges all around. So thank you again for your time. We really, really appreciate it. We appreciate you, and just thank you. We'll do a virtual applause.